Right. I've also got very good sources. I would never even have looked at this without a whole bunch of phone calls. But let's just start with the fact that has been terribly under-publicized was that on February 17th, 2 days ago, Juan Carlos met with Obama in Washington, and a lot led up to this. But just keep in mind that on the same day, Wednesday, February 17th, 48 hours ago, Obama meets King Juan Carlos, and you hear announcements of cordiality, but it wasn't cordiality. While Obama's meeting Juan Carlos in first in Syria, William Burns, nasty person, been involved with the so-called peace process for 10, 12 years at least, of the Council on Foreign Relations, sits down with Bashir Assad and announces that America is going to present Syria with an ambassador. Now, remember, this is the terror state Syria that murdered the Lebanese prime minister and blew up 229 Marines in their barracks. America does not have any high diplomatic relations with Syria. On the day that Obama meets King Juan Carlos, well, what do you know? America announces it's going to present Damascus with an ambassador. Again, completely ignored, but more to the point, while Obama is meeting King Juan Carlos in Saudi Arabia, well, who does the king? And by the way, they don't call their king the king. Lately, they've been calling him the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Abdullah Al Saud. Neither here nor there, he meets with David Petraeus. He is, well, he's running the Iraq war, but more to the point, he is, he is the commander of the U.S. Central Command. They're all meeting 2-3 hours apart on this tremendous day, but I'm going to give you a not coincidence, and then we'll go on. In June, 6 months ago, June 2009, Obama meets the King of Saudi Arabia. Well, the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Abdullah Al Saud. And as he meets, and by the way, bows down to him, does all kinds of diplomatic, non-diplomatic maneuvers, but more to the point, while he's meeting with him, what do you know? 2 messages were sent to the king, delivered by the Spanish vice president. You've never heard of her, it doesn't matter, Elena Salgado, to the king of Saudi Arabia while Obama is meeting with the king of Saudi Arabia. And I'm going to repeat, 2 days ago, while Obama is meeting with King Juan Carlos, David Petraeus is meeting with the king of Saudi Arabia. What this all comes down to right now, get this out of the way, is there's a nasty little triangle going on between King Juan Carlos, the Saudi Arabian king, and Obama. And it's not a coincidence, by the way. These things don't happen coincidentally. I don't know if I should repeat that, but for now I won't. 2 days ago, Obama met King Juan Carlos, David Petraeus met the King of Saudi Arabia, and William Burns met Bashir Assad, president of Syria, to announce a new ambassador. This all took place 2 days ago. And now a little background, now that you have this knowledge. This, by the way, was a tremendously disastrous day for the people of the world and for Israel in particular, but now some background. King Juan Carlos, well, he was not raised and educated in Spain. He was raised and educated in Rome. Was sent from Rome. By the way, it matters to some people. He was Jesuit educated. Well, King Juan Carlos during Franco's, it doesn't matter. He was brought from Rome to be king of Spain during Franco's administration, his very long administration, but his ties to the Vatican are direct. He is representing Vatican ties in Spain directly, and more to the point, his official title, custodian of the Christian Holy Centers of Jerusalem. In other words, he is the King of Jerusalem, and we may view this as antiquated and obsolete and worthless, but they don't in the Vatican. This means lots to them. Background before we go into the foreground. The Vatican did take Jerusalem, Second Crusade, the Holy Roman Empire of the Germanic Republics. We don't need a history lesson. Frederick Barbarossa became the King of Jerusalem, the first Vatican king to take over Jerusalem since the Roman Empire. In 1,000 years, all right, in 1,000 years, the Vatican, they view Jerusalem as their true capital. And again, Rome is a temporary capital. Jerusalem, to them, is where Jesus reigned, and it's their capital, and they're using this King Juan Carlos to get it back. We've got a new crusade going on, and I am not exaggerating or being dramatic. Now, we're going to do a little background into what is going on today. January 1st of this year, Spain took over the revolving leadership of the EU. In case you didn't know, there's a presidency that revolves in the EU. Spain is now the president of the European Union, and on January 1st, as Spain took over the EU, Lebanon was invited into the Security Council of the United Nations. And this is not a coincidence. This is no movie. War preparations they're in high gear now. Look, we had a couple of weeks we didn't speak, and I spoke about what the plans are for the next war, and it's widely known in Israel that Hezbollah is planning a 5-front military attack under, 10,000 rockets on the first day under a massive rocket attack. Damascus right now has ordered its troop on a 4th out of 5 level mobilization. Lebanon is on the same mobilization. They're spreading the word that Israel is ready to attack, and the Israeli Defense Minister, Ehud Barak, who is playing ball with the enemy, has removed Israeli training troops from the Golan Heights and has stopped distribution of gas masks, and it's playing ball it's just like 1973 when Moshe Dayan cut a deal with Kissinger to give the Arabs 24 hours when Israel didn't respond, and 3,000 Israelis died for Moshe Dayan and his finagling. The same thing is going on today with Barak and Netanyahu. Now, more to the point, what is going on in Syria is in the Bekaa Valley, next to Syria. They're training the Hezbollah troops, if you call them troops, on it's not a new rocket, but it's a deadly, solid propellant, precision-guided, 250-kilometer range rocket called the Fatah 110. A massive airlift of these missiles is taking place from Iran. Syria produces them. Hezbollah is going to attack Israeli Air Force bases, Israeli military bases, Tel Aviv, intelligence centers, everything they've got is being prepared for this attack, and the Arabs are getting very cocky. Well, Syria is promising Israel that it won't win the next war, and Hezbollah is promising the Arabs that the region's order will be changed after the next war, and they've got a lot of good reason to be very confident because Israel can't survive a massive rocket attack. It had a minor rocket attack, it turns out, in the summer of '06, a crummy 4,000 rockets over 34 days cleared out all of northern Israel. Anyone with a car headed south slept on beaches. If they were lucky, they found a hotel. Israel lost the war in the summer of '06 with a crummy 4,000 missiles over 34 days. Wait till they see 10,000. These have got chemical and biological warheads, and Barak has stopped deployment of gas masks. Israel's a sitting duck. Now let's go back to Juan Carlos, and let's go back to Spain, because if people don't understand, well, Juan Carlos is going to get his kingdom back. The Vatican has been pushing Israel to give all its properties, a status of mini-states, non-taxed, non-policed, the works in Israel, and Israel has been, because basically the people find it an atrocity that there are sites in their country that are diplomatically not in Israel. Israel has not given in, but nonetheless they've got people working for the Vatican in the Israeli government, the highest being the president of Israel, Shimon Peres, who is simply a spy for the Vatican. But again, with this background, let's see what Juan Carlos did before he got to Washington. Juan Carlos went to Lebanon. That's what he did. And now, officially, if you read the reports, he was there to inspect the troops. Now, to remind anyone who doesn't know, and that's probably everyone listening here, after the war in the summer of '06, a conference was held in Rome. Hillary Clinton representing America, and in the conference, well, they decided that Israel and Hezbollah would be separated by United Nations forces, 80% of them from Southern Europe. They're from Spain and Italy, primarily, also France and Germany. They're the ones separating Israel from Hezbollah and supposedly preventing another outbreak of war. Well, Juan Carlos goes to Lebanon, and this is, again, what was it, 10 days, 2 weeks ago? It doesn't matter. It was before he arrived for his Obama visit. And we're told that he inspected the troops. Now, I don't know how many people have been to a military inspection, but that's really not news. The troops stand at attention. Oh, well, whoever is inspecting, in this case, Juan Carlos, if he sees, a shoelace undone, he'll stop and he will condemn the soldier and tell him to get an order, or he will say, well done, to a perfectly orderly soldier. It's a waste of time. What Obama would, again, I made that mistake, what Juan Carlos was doing was meeting the new commander of the UNIFIL forces. It is Spanish Commander Major General Alberto Asarta Cuevas is now running the forces that supposedly will stop a war between Israel and Hezbollah. Lo and behold, and lucky Spain, it's Spanish. The troops are 80% Catholic, and the leader, the commander, is a Spaniard. And what Juan Carlos was doing there was having negotiations with his army, the Spanish army, ultimately, on how not to interfere with the upcoming war. Now, again, if the UN really were a peace force, they would go and stop Hezbollah from shooting rockets. The Madrid conference in 1991 was what the Arabs did. Well, they formulated their peace agreement on Madrid. Surprise, surprise. Next is Barcelona, which preceded Madrid, to achieve the Euro-Mediterranean cooperation, and what the Lebanese president reminded Juan Carlos was that it's Israel's intransigence and settlement building that has prevented this agreement, the Arab peace agreement, from being put in practice. Look, as for Israel building settlements, Hezbollah is Shiite. The West Bank is Sunni. The Shiites and the Sunnis despise each other. They blow each other to smithereens in Iraq. They could not care less than Hezbollah about Israel building settlements. They have equal animosity to the Sunnis. You have to separate this fight, and there's a big problem, certainly in America, that it's the Jews and the United Arabs and all the Zionists are the same, and the Arabs are on the same side. Nothing like that can be further from the truth. Hezbollah is Shiite. It's getting its missiles from Iran, which is Shiite. It's being trained in Syria is Alawite, which is, it's farther enough away from both Shiite and Sunni that they can act as sort of a neutral transporter of war. But Hezbollah has zero, and I mean zero, concern over Israeli settlements. None. So what Sleeman is claiming is that Israel's settlement building is the reason that peace has now not reached the Middle East is hooey. And by the way, those from the Middle East will know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't heard this before, well, tough luck. That's the fact of the matter. The Hezbollah is Shiite and could not care less if the Sunni Muslims are being interrupted by settlements. More to the point, what Suleiman is saying is you got to get rid of Israel. Just outright, you're now the commander of the UNIFIL forces. You gave us the Madrid peace process that led to, well, he didn't say the atrocity of Oslo. I'm saying that. Well, now you got to get rid of Israel. Enough is enough. We're sick of it. We had an agreement in Rome in the summer of '06. You are there in southern Lebanon dividing Hezbollah from Israel. The message is you don't stop Hezbollah from their war against Israel. If you don't do it, we won't do it. That is the message. And by the way, that's not heavy reading between lines. That's how you read all Middle East news. Michel Suleiman is a Christian. I don't know if he realizes the trouble he's in after this war, but he feels compelled to tell Spain not to interfere with the upcoming war. That's what this whole state dinner told Juan Carlos, as if we didn't know. And Juan Carlos tells the commander of the UNIFIL forces in southern Lebanon, we've got some plans. We'll get you out of there. Don't interfere with Hezbollah. In other words, the war, it's just being ironed out that Israel is going to be victimized by, my Lord, tens of thousands of weapons, of rockets with biological and chemical warheads. And in Israel, the defense minister, again, Ehud Barak, if you don't know the past, read my website, get my books. Ehud Barak has stopped distribution of gas masks. Israel is a sitting duck. Now, let's look a little bit. We are going to return, by the way, to the Mediterranean Union. I'm probably getting everybody lost, but I'll write about it next week. It's a complicated thing, but the fact is that Israel told the Spanish foreign minister on February 3rd, his name is Miguel Moratinos, they told him to get to Syria and you threaten them that if Hezbollah launches these Fatah 110 missiles, that Syria is supplying and training them on, that Damascus is going to be dust. Now, again, Israel had a war in 2006 where it was, the north of Israel was cleared out by missiles, and Israel turned southern Beirut into dust, and it made no difference. In the upcoming war, the Israeli air bases, the runways are going to be so pockmarked, a jet can't take off. It's going to be a very nasty war coming up. But even if they turn Beirut into dust again, and even if they bomb Damascus again, the Arabs will view this as a setback. They'll rebuild Damascus and Beirut just so long as Israel is demolished. And this is, again, these threats, again, delivered by Miguel Moratinos, the Spanish foreign minister, on February the 3rd, that Israel will destroy Damascus. They mean nothing to the Syrians, nothing. The time has come to get rid of Israel, and they're going to take a temporary setback. It may take them 10, 12 years to rebuild Damascus, but it means nothing. Beirut, since 2006, has been, well, effectively rebuilt. Israel has no defense against this war plan. There are too many factors involved. Now, I'm going to tell you again, I did it on your show, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. In November, Juan Carlos flew to Malta, and in Malta, he opened up a brand new headquarters for what is called the Mediterranean Union. The Mediterranean Union consists of 10 countries, 5 in southern Europe and 5 in northern Africa. And they are all joined together to, well, I'll tell you what they're joined together. They're going to rebuild the borders of the Roman Empire. That's what these states are all positioned to do. These were ultimately the borders of the Roman Empire. And Juan Carlos is going to rebuild through the Mediterranean Union, a modern name. He can't call it the renewed Roman Empire. In Malta in November, the headquarters for the Mediterranean Union was opened by King Juan Carlos of Spain. And this month, a week ago, in Malta, there was a wonderful conference. Wish I could have been there. Great time. Good booze, Maltan girls, the works. I'm joking. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. Now let's look at Malta. Malta is the King Juan Carlos initiated Mediterranean Union of 5 Arab states and 5 Catholic states, all joined together to do God knows what. Right? Really, they'll tell you that it's for cooperation, and really, does someone in Portugal or Malta really care if they're cooperating with Libya or Algeria? But It's very, very serious when you want to rebuild an ancient empire and you want to get King Juan Carlos back as the king of Jerusalem, and these wackos actually believe in this stuff. I can't stress that enough. To us, it sounds, well, obsolete and ridiculous. To them, this is their world. This is how they think. And if you don't think like they think, you won't understand the war that's coming up. And you won't understand the motives of the war that's coming up. I'm not going to go into Obama. And he's got ties. He's got Catholic ties that brought him to Chicago, and he's got Muslim ties that are bringing him into this war, and there are all kinds of reasons why the CFR have been pushing this stuff really since the late 80s for sure. But since the Oslo Accord, they've been pushing Israel to the very edge of nationhood and sovereignty. Israel today is so divided, I don't even know if they can fight a war. But nonetheless, this war is coming. The Malta Group, which I'm going to repeat, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, which you may or may not have heard of, you shouldn't have, because it's just, well, it has nothing to do with your lives or mine, but it has plenty to do with Rome's life. They had themselves a conference. The conference, and this month, I want you to know, this month, the conference was called the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. That is King Juan Carlos's parliament in Malta leading up to this war. They just had the conference. King Juan Carlos just met Obama. There wasn't a word of it, not a word of it anywhere. The word was that Israel knocked off a Hamas terrorist in Dubai. Nothing on King Juan Carlos, which was the real news. What you've got is a war coming, and Israel's enemies, first of all, are within Israel. Its own leadership are an abomination. And they are so tied up. Netanyahu has been tied up with the CFR since 1977. The leadership of Israel is put in power by the CFR. On the one hand, that is Netanyahu, Barak, and the Vatican on the other, the president of Israel, Peres, not to mention Yossi Beilin and other people at the top of Israel. The Israeli people don't even understand that it's an utter waste of time to go to the polls and elect a government, because you get the Labor Party with its crummy 13 seats, 8% of the population, determining whether Israel will win or lose the next war. And Barak is making sure that they're going to lose. I'm going to add a last point before I finally plug myself so you get more of this knowledge. Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, who led Operation Cast Lead into Gaza last January, the January before, actually, wrote a book. He went, he was interviewed by Ma'ariv 6 days ago, where he said he would have brought down Hamas. He would have ended the war, except Ehud Barak, his defense minister, told him it would take many more months and lots of Israeli casualties, and to accept a ceasefire. And Omer says he believed Barak, and that's why he didn't finish the war. And believe me, this guy is really slimy, but in this case, I think I'll believe his version of events. What you've got within the Israeli government are people who really, really are not trying to shelter the Jews in their home of Israel. They're trying to get the Vatican back. And this is extremely serious, because in a few months, when the winter rain ends, Israel's going to have a war that truly it has an excellent chance of losing. And excellent excellent chance. The odds are against Israel of winning the upcoming war.